Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Beyond Terrain podcast. I'm your host, Lee of Dalton. We got a great episode on the way today. Really looking forward to it. This is where we see technology and nature sort of getting more in a line, more aligned together. We can use technologies. We always talk about this on the trying to integrate the modern world with getting back to a more natural way of life. So we have Tristan Scott on today. I'm sure we could talk about a great many of topics, but we're going to focus on a really interesting product that he has coming out here. We'll save it for a few minutes. But Tristan, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's a pleasure. I think I remember we touched base maybe last year at some point, so it's cool to see this conversation happen and everything you've done. And it's a great alternative perspective and a great topic, right? The convergence of nature and modern society.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, it's what we're all about. So the introductory question I ask all my guests, I want to get your take on this. I'm really eager to hear. We get all of our guests to define health. What does health mean to you? What does it look like? How does it manifest? Love to hear your insight here. So take it away.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I think it's actually a really important question because the metric for what is health is been so skewed, been so, adulterated in a modern world. I actually think that so many of the things that I talk about, you talk about probably as well, they're not even really just health benefits. They're just like returning to a state of normalcy, a baseline of where humanity should be. So I mean, in general, health, I feel like, is having no limitations in human, physiology and what we want to do on a daily basis. If have vitality, if you have energy, if you have recovery, you have the emotional and mental stability, you're able to do the things you want, both physically, emotionally, mentally, as a human being, right? So, and that's what it's meant for, is when we have our health, we can accomplish things and we can accomplish what we're put on this earth to do, and then reproduce as a result of that hormonally. Our health is extremely important. So for me, it's not being limited in any capacity for what humans should be able to do. That's health. It's waking up every day and not having to rely on external crutches or exogenous substances to get you through your day. It's You're just there. Your baseline is already at that point of output.
Great answer. I couldn't agree more. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Because it's very individual thing, right? It depends on what your goals and dreams are as an individual too. What you're able to accomplish um so people have different standards when it comes to health too. I would probably describe myself as a little bit of a perfectionist. I'm sure my wife would agree with that. But anyways, like when we're talking about health and trying to get back into nature, that's what I always come back to, getting back to nature. And we've had this figured out for a long time, getting back to what our ancestors did, what they knew, and there's a lot to be learned there. So I appreciate your take. I think that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to hear about this amazing project that you have on the go. Um, I kind of want to just give you the floor to maybe introduce it. I got a few questions that I can't wait to ask you about it. I think this is revolutionary, honestly, and so I'm so eager to hear more about it and learn more about it because really I haven't looked into it greatly. So it'd be great for me and obviously the listeners. I think this is a way forward, something that, I want to sort of integrate into my practice moving forward, my life, and because and it gets back to this trying to achieve a healthier way of life. Obviously in the modern world, we have big goals and big dreams that rely on this beautiful interconnectedness that we have. Like now we're meeting through these screens, uh, staring at each other through some blue light emitting devices. So it'd be cool if we could do that in a different way without having that harmful blue light. Anyways, I'll give you the floor. You take it away, man.
Yeah, well, you already, it's good to preface, what we're doing with the situation we're in currently, right? So you mentioned this return to nature, and that's really our whole, it's been my mission for a few years now, and our company mission is we want to return to what is real, and what is real is what our biology is designed to take as an input signal, as the environment that we can thrive in. Right now, we are in an environment, most people, of course, that is making us sick. It's making us suboptimal. Why? Because it's artificial. It's strayed from the optimal environment of what nature provides us. And we are suffering as a result of that, physically, mentally, and the technological devices that we spend an ever increasing amount of time on in modern day, um, is very invasive to our biology, right? Like they're not designed, they're not built with this synergism of the natural world in mind. Quite the opposite, right? They're designed at this point to be quite addicting. They want to keep you on the screens longer because then they're getting the business model benefits from that. And that's how it's set up. So the big tech companies have no incentive to change to make a healthier product. And why are they bad for our health? There's many reasons, both directly and indirectly. And directly, the screen itself, as you mentioned, it's very high in blue light, very low, very unbalanced light spectrum. So very low in red, infrared. Of course, it has no UV light. And this is an unbalanced spectrum that we would never experience in the natural world, because in nature, in sunlight, you only get blue with red and infrared. You only get UV with red and infrared. And that's where this whole issue of isolated artificial light comes into play. And then, of course, before the sun comes up and after the sun goes down in nature, there would be no light. And the light we had for, tens of thousands of years in terms of fire and candles is very dull. It's very rich in the low energy, more healing wavelengths of red and infrared, and very, very, very minimal, if at all, containing any of the more stimulating high energy wavelengths such as blue. And this is completely changing how our physiology is, taking the environment that it's in. Because if you stare at a blue lit screen after sunset, you're going to be altering your circadian rhythm, which you could argue might be the most important aspect of our health, because it's really upstream from everything. It is, the clock system. And if you have desynchronicity across clocks in any system and the timing's off, you're not going to have a symphony. You're going to have chaos. You're going to have a lot of actions, a lot of reactions, and kind of functions just being off in terms of timing. And that's what we're seeing, right? That's what we're seeing, chronic fatigue, sleep issues, and then ultimately chronic disease, because we're not able to restore and recover due to this poor sleep, due to this inability to ever shut off these non-native electromagnetic inputs. And for me as an electrical engineer, the electromagnetic aspects of our biology and health is very important, very underdiscussed, and absolutely absent from mainstream academia's curriculum. And that's why things such as light and EMFs and grounding have been deemed as esoteric and woo woo, because it does defy the conceivable notion and kind of what we can wrap our head around, because we can't always see these things. Yet we're consuming these inputs 365 days a year, 24/7, as opposed to something like food, which is very tangible. We, put in our mouths, we can taste it, we can feel it, we can see it. Seed oils and other things, like when you burn something, it looks bad for us, and you can almost kind of have a natural reaction or understanding to those items. However, if something's invisible and it's just all around us, we barely notice. So that's kind of where we're at. And these screens, yeah, they're also flickering. The LEDs, that's an under discussed negative characteristic of LEDs and of screens. They're constantly flickering. So you get blue light and you get flicker, which has been kind of undebatably known to aggravate symptoms of autism, cause anxiety, cause eye strain, cause migraines. And then on top of all that, the most detrimental aspect for me of modern technology is that it's keeping us inside. And inside is where all these toxins are really accumulating. And then we're not getting all of the benefits of the outside world, which again, we call them benefits, but in reality, that's just where we're meant to be. So we're really just nutritionally or, electromagnetically deficient in the right inputs of, sunlight, of grounding, being connected to the earth, the fresh air, as opposed to being inside when you're getting whatever amount of VOC is off gassing from the furniture in your house. You have a higher density of non-native radio frequencies and power frequency EMFs. And then, of course, you have artificial lighting as well. And then you're missing out on the benefits of sunlight, which when you go outside could be 1,000 times, 10,000 times brighter. That's why we're always like, when we go outside, can't even see. That brightness is a measure of energy density. So we're leaving all this energy on the table, which is free and accessible to anyone. And the same thing with grounding, right? Like free electrons just available for us to tap into. So our mission at Daylight Computer is really, how do we create technology from the ground up that takes all of these considerations in mind and sort of fixes them? Because right now, what do we have? We have kind of band-aid solutions. You can wear blue light blocking glasses. You can put on a red light screen filter to get rid of the blue light. They're great. I use them. I'm sure you've used them, but they're pretty terrible in terms of their user experience. Most people will never do it. They don't get rid of flicker. And then because it's just red, you can actually barely see anything. So that's one piece of it. And then also just the addictive nature of the software and kind of this combination of the light and the content is really just keeping us on these devices longer. So can we do anything about that? What do we do today? You set timers for Instagram, or you try and make your phone grayscale, which doesn't even get rid of the blue light. It helps from a perception, but it's really color mixing, and then you still have the blue light. And then you could get into the weeds of like privacy, security, and sovereignty, because that's a huge concern, right? And it's all tied into one another, because the reason why the algorithm's so good is because it's taking your data across all your internet experiences and using that to create a profile so that it is the content that you want to see that's lighting up your brain and then keeping you on there longer. So what if we had a software operating system and kind of whole experience with the hardware and the software that was just purely built as something for productivity, instead of this is a portal, this is the claws coming out of the screen to just keep you there as long as possible. And that's what we should strive for, right? Like, humans are incredible species. We are apex species when we have tools, whether it's, some spear, or when we had the bow and arrow, or on a horse, or on a bicycle, or a typewriter, or just having these sorts of things available to us makes us so much better than, baseline. However, now we live in a world where we have the universe's knowledge at our fingertips. Literally, you could learn anything in the world. You could become an expert in any topic. You could learn any skill, any trade. There's YouTube tutorials, there's books, everything. Like, it's all there. Yet we're probably declining in terms of how much we're learning in skill sets. And instead, we're distracted. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. We're just kind of worried about what's going on in a foreign country, because that's what the media wants us to consume. And we've never known less about what's going on in our immediate community our immediate landscape, our immediate environment. And then, of course, everything is tailored around that kind of global connection when what is local matters way more. So we're at an inflection point, I think, and people are aware of it. People are aware that devices are addicting. The screen time thing is like, I mean, even my friends I lived with a few years ago, like we'd be like, oh, trying to cut down the screen time, blah blah blah, and parents and kids, they know that the iPads are just terrible for their kids, but they're so busy as parents that 10 minutes here is a lifesaver. Turn on the TV. It's something, just in the modern world when you can't have a just one parent watching children all day because maybe of the monetary system and the way we're set up economically, these are helpful. However, people don't really have an alternative to go to. There is no healthy iPad. There is no phone that's comparable, but less distracting. And there certainly isn't a big education wherewithal knowledge about why this is like this. So we think it's the perfect timing, and it's really incredible that we've been able to develop a new screen, a new display technology from the ground up, and that this has been 5-6 years in the making. So yeah, our first product, the Daylight Computer One, is a tablet form factor that has a new screen, that's kind of taking from the past, but making it adapted for the modern world. So it's a monochrome screen. There's no color. It has no blue light, no flicker. And then it's reflective at the core. So you can go and use it outside in the sun. You can see it better. And it's similar to like a Kindle type screen technology. However, the problem with those electronic ink screens is that they're very slow, so you can only read books on them. We wanted to create something that was fast enough to feel like a piece of paper, but you could still browse on the internet. You could still use apps. You could still answer emails and be productive. And that's kind of what we've built, is the best of both worlds. So if an iPad and a Kindle had a baby, and you have a company that's building out a whole ecosystem centered around health and wellness, what would it look like? And that's what we kind of always tell people is, if Apple started today and really cared about health and wellness and the well-being of its customers, what would it look like? What would a computer company starting from scratch look like? And that's what we're trying to do. And we launched that product in May, and it's gone really well so far. We're sold out for the year. It is definitely quite challenging to balance inventory, and just from a monetary perspective, it costs a lot of money to just bring something like this to market. So it's been an incredible experience, and we're really just trying to usher in kind of a grassroots movement, a community push, because it has to be. We're trying to compete with companies like Apple that sell 75 million iPads a year, and they have no incentive to change. So even if we can carve out a tiny piece of this market as a healthier iPad that's less distracting, you can use it outside, and eventually we'll have a lot of privacy security features. That would be amazing, because we could change millions of lives doing so, and provide people for the first time a real choice, a real alternative, because we can eat healthier food, we can wear healthier clothes, we can go outside more, we can ditch plastics and PFA cookware. But I'm on a MacBook and I have an iPhone, and that's just the reality of the world we live in. So it's about time that we had an alternative that's healthier for that too.
Agreed. Yeah, amazing. I feel like you hit the nail on the head with everything there. I don't even really have much to add to that, Yeah. But of course, like this EMF, these blue lights, like you hit the nail on the head with the circadian rhythm, especially. Um, Everybody knows what happens when they don't get proper sleep, and blue light is a huge culprit for that. Um, when it comes to the addiction, grayscale is something that can help with phone addiction, but like you said, you're not addressing the blue light issue, right? Um, all of these screens are so stimulating. They're so it's a huge issue, right? And it is difficult to live in the mod. We all say now, oh, I'll switch to a flip phone, but it rarely happens. I think Dr. Mark Bailey is probably the only guy that I know that on a flip phone right now, and he's somebody that we should all maybe look up to a little more. But it's amazing, man. I love this project, so cool. And there is a need. There is a paradigm shift going on. I'm sure you would agree. We are moving into a world where we're becoming more health conscious. Even if it is sort of bastardized by the uh, climate change movement. People do care about at least the health of the environment, and in turn I think people are caring more about health. They're trying to minimize plastics and one-time use clothing. Even the clothing industry is another whole issue. But like you said, the EMF, the blue light, is the one thing that's really hard to control. And this is one beautiful way that we might. Obviously, it's in its beginning stages. It's coming out as an iPad. I'm sure a computer, a laptop, a computer screen, whatever it may be, is in the works as well over time. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about the software. What are we able to use on this device? Because it's like, it's not a Kindle, right? That's very limited and slow, like you mentioned. But what is the capabilities of this device at this point in time? You liken it to an iPad, so what exactly is the kind of the distinction there between an iOS or an Android type thing there? Yeah, so
Yeah, I mean, it's really similar to like an Android tablet. So it's running a modified Android operating system currently. We're building our own OS. That's like what we're doing. It's in its infancy. So right now, to like in this very moment, there's not a huge distinction, but we've built some custom apps. We have a custom PDF reader that we've built that really is awesome, and you can annotate notes if you like reading scientific literature or books, or you mark up PDFs. It's amazing. The zoom on it is incredible, the responsiveness, and just the fact that you can use it in the environment that our device allows for, outside, inside, at nighttime. But yeah, the goal is really to keep building on the progress from a software ecosystem. And later this year, early next year, we plan to release, I guess, what you would call our custom OS, which is called Soul OS. And that will be, still modified custom version of Android for now, but centered around low distraction, productivity, and really, just not pinging you with notifications all the time, some custom workflows and apps, like I mentioned, around that theme and motif. And then over time, developing your own operating system, it takes a long time, right? And that's the challenge here, but it's an exciting one. Is that Apple and Google, they've had decades to build out their OS, their software environment. They've had decades to kind of like really optimize their hardware experience as well. So for us, we appreciate all of our early supporters, like, to the highest degree. I mean, I've been using our V1 engineering demo, and it's an incredible V1. That's all I have to say. Is I'm very proud of the team. I use it more and more every day because I'm feel better when I do. And the software piece long term is really exciting because that's where we can kind of go on our own. And if we do value privacy and security, which we definitely do, we can bake in features like that directly into the operating system. We can bake in something from artificial intelligence or language models that really enhance productivity without, again, capturing your attention or really used in the wrong ways. So by having the hardware interface and just being in charge and creating the entire computing stack from the screen to the electronics to the software, we can really have this luxury to be the first like full solution centered around what I like to just say the sovereignty stack, right? From the physical to the cognitive to the individual level of data and security. And that's where we're going. And it's exciting. But yeah, right now you can download any Android app from the Google Play Store. You can go on Google Mail, Docs, Sheets. You can download Twitter, Instagram. They look completely different. because it's monochrome experience. And I'm currently experimenting myself, trying to spend less time on social media because my role at Daylight is ever expanding, and we're ever increasing in terms of how busy we are. So I only have Instagram on my Daylight computer now, and I find that amazing. I use it, like, I go on there once a day to like check DMs, and then I'm just there writing a few messages. Maybe I post a story, maybe not, and I'm gone. Same thing with Twitter. The Twitter feed is almost more similar to like reading a newspaper, as opposed to just having all of these stimulating videos and written tweets and bright colors. So you're just, if you go into a casino and all the lights are grayscale, you're a lot less likely to hang around and pull the slots and lose all your money. So that's kind of where I see it. But yeah, that's the software capabilities. You can connect a keyboard, turn it horizontally and write. The tablet's a quite versatile form factor, and that's why we started there. And like you mentioned, the roadmap will does include a phone, a full-on laptop, monitors, much more. But we need to be, successful in sales with the tablet, the V1 first.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It's cool to watch something like this kind of get off the ground too, though. I think it's really exciting from the consumer side of things, right? Like watching the software develop, and obviously, um, you guys are very transparent and open. Like you mentioned, you're on the DMs answering that kind of stuff too. Like, you know, there's a really great connection there between the consumer and the company, right? Which you don't see too often. Like try and get through to Apple or Google and good luck, right? So, um, you know, you mentioned some really interesting things in regarding security and privacy, and I think that is increasingly important in this day and age. Of course, things with crypto, and a lot of people are moving into that. That's a big thing with security, especially. But just with our general information, in regards to our privacy and stuff like that. Maybe you could speak a little bit more to that. I'd be eager to hear that because that's really an amazing thing that you guys are integrating into this.
Yeah, and it's not a coincidence that like a good core of our leadership team is we're all like Bitcoiners, are really into like decentralized money, because it all comes back to the money. And when we're on a fiat standard and it's quite broken, the incentives are completely misaligned. We've seen how that's completely negatively affected our food system, our healthcare system. And now, what is the biggest industry that's propping up this entire fiat economy? A large part of it is tech, right? And it's this insatiable need to grow in order to keep up with this expanding monetary supply and rampant inflation from just printing more money, because we're in this situation in the first place. That's why they're so beholden to their shareholders, because they have to grow. They have to keep growing. So they have to come up with more stuff to sell you, and they have to do it cheaper, so the quality goes down. And then you have to spend more time when it comes to tech, specifically on these devices. So that's really the business model that they're stuck in. And in order to do that, they're farming all your data. They're using that as, an income stream, and then also to keep you on the devices longer. And it's just ridiculous, right? We've almost given up. Like, Facebook dilemma came out, and then everyone's like all pissed off. And then guess what happened? Absolutely nothing has happened, right? Like, we have made no progress. I think people have just fully given up. I mean, even me, right? Like, it's really inconvenient to just leave the modern suite of products, like Google Mail, like, just using an iPhone or an Android product. And right now, the only workarounds are kind of what you're saying. You have like these digital minimalist phones, and then you also have these like de-Googled phones. You could run something like a Graphene or a Calyx OS, which again, it's just one piece of the computing stack. It's like this more private, more secure operating system. You can get maybe a little dumb phone, and you're trying to piece it together. Almost nobody's doing this except the hardcore people, which I respect them for. But for us, we see this opportunity. It's like, what if we had it all in one solution? What if we integrated decentralized or sovereign software protocols directly into the operating system. So instead of logging in with Facebook and Google, you're logging in with your 12 word private key, whether that's tied to Nostr or tied to Bitcoin or something else. And then you log in, and all the apps in the ecosystem, which maybe instead of being a part of the Apple monopoly 30% tax app store, is this decentralized web app network that isn't charging people or isn't censoring people for what they're building on there. And we see so many cool projects in this, sovereign software space, in Bitcoin and crypto, all of these folks, right? And they have all the similar problem, right? They don't have a hardware vehicle to get it to the mainstream. And the UI UX is a major challenge, because why is search, why is like just the interface so good for big tech, is because they've been working on it for decades and they have all your data. So it becomes really good in terms of the user experience. So the hurdle for people, the average person, like, my mom, to set up a Bitcoin wallet or to go on Nostr or Farcast or something, it's like so out of the realm of possibility that it's just like always going to be a niche thing. And we have the option to maybe bring it to millions of people, because daylight pay equivalent to Apple Pay, maybe it could just be Bitcoin Lightning under the hood, and you don't even realize that's ongoing. But it's decentralized and it's not, again, taking all your data. So we have a lot of big dreams there, big ideas. We think that's really the long term direction we want to move in from a software perspective. But it's going to take some time to get there, and we're open to all that feedback. But we think people will value that tremendously and really increasingly as we go on over time. But today, the solutions aren't convenient, they're not amazing, and they're all like one step of the process instead of the whole thing.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, and like trying to explain like crypto is a big thing to sort of learn about. It's a whole field in itself, right? And um I'm not extremely well versed, but even something like Web3. I'm familiar with the concept, but I couldn't tell you how to access it or even what it is, right? Like, and maybe that's I think one of the problem is like you need to understand what it is to be able to utilize these things. And having it simple, easy to access is going to be absolutely the most important thing when it comes to integrating these principles too, right? Because the thing about these phones and these screens that we're using now, it's convenient, it's stimulating, it's addictive, it's like kicking an addiction almost trying to get off social media. I would say that people are highly addicted to social media because it's absolutely designed to do that. But to make the transition from something so comfortable, so convenient, so, addictive to something, obviously I believe that we do need to put in the great work and sort of curb our addictions. I think that's an important thing that we need to do. But making that transition convenient is going to be a very important thing. So that's what I appreciate about this a lot, is because it's all gonna be integrated. Like you're mentioning these hardcore guys, man, like, I wouldn't know how to do any of that, like, uh, so some of these guys out here, they're amazing at cybersecurity, and they're amazing at decentralization, and they're amazing at sort of being under the radar and off the grid and stuff like that. So it's about facilitating that process, that transition is gonna be super, super important. So this project, whenever you talk about it, it's like all of my values, my beliefs coming together into one like amazing company. So it excites me so much to learn more about this stuff. Like so about the screen itself, like if you could maybe like in an easy to understand way, sort of explain the technology behind it. You mentioned it's a reflective screen. I'm kind of interested in the like kind of the science behind it or the physics behind it. It works outside and it reflects the sunlight, or like how does it work inside? Does it emit a light whatsoever? What does this monochrome even mean? I'd love to hear a little bit more about that side of things.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, monochrome just means like single, like color, like it's black and white basically. And yeah, we have these micro reflective structures in the screen. So, reflective screens are not something that is like new. Again, we've had the Kindle, your old like Game Boy and calculators. Some things use reflective screens as well. So it's like similar in this regard, but we made some breakthroughs that kind of again address the refresh rate issue with a lot of these electronic ink type screens. So it's completely different than that. However, you're getting a lot of the benefits of it looking like a piece of paper at just a faster speed. So it's 60 frames per second, and you can refresh, an internet browser just like at a normal speed. However, it's has that paper like feel. Even when you write on it, it feels very analog even though it's digital. And another breakthrough we have is the fact that we're using a backlight. So at nighttime, again, when there's no light in the environment, you can't see a reflective screen really well. So you need to have a combination, and that's what we've done. So in the sun, you don't need to have any light on. It's purely acting like a piece of paper where it's reflecting the light back into your eyes. And that's a benefit. Why? Because that's how nature works. The trees I'm staring at through my window right now are green, the leaves, because they're reflecting green light back. They're absorbing all the visible spectrum and then reflecting green. That's how nature works. Whereas screens are very emissive. They are, emitting light back at us, and that's like very unnatural. The only emissive sources of light in nature are typically the sun and fire. So that's just like a completely different experience. So at nighttime, when we have no light, we need some. So we have a backlight as well, but this isn't an ordinary backlight that say like a Kindle has or another device has. It's custom LEDs that we have, hand selected the light spectrum to be much more synergistic with our biology. It has an amber backlight. So again, I talked earlier about red light screen filters and blue light blocking glasses. They're great, but your screen is dark red. Like, I don't know where I put my phone, but I have the triple click shortcut and, it turns your phone red. That's cool. No blue light. I love it. But you can't see anything. And then you actually have to turn the brightness up a little bit more in order to actually see anything. So if you listen to people like Huberman and, some of these other people that are kind of like dancing a little carefully around blue light, they like to say this. They like to say that the intensity of the light matters just as much as the spectrum. And that is true. The light intensity does matter tremendously. So if you have a red screen and it's cranked all the way up in brightness, then that's not ideal either. And then you can't see anything. So you're probably like never going to use it. Our spectrum, it's more spread out. We have a little bit of green, a lot of yellow, orange, and red. So it looks amber. It looks more like a candle. And that broad spectrum spreads out the power density of the wavelengths. And then because your photoreceptors are far more sensitive to green and yellow, you can actually see it at a far lower intensity, see it better. So you don't need to have the brightness very high. And the way we're able to do that with a reflective screen is really cool. We're able to have these like micro perforations in the screen to let this backlight shine through the paper, like what we call live paper screen technology. So you have the ability to adjust the brightness and then adjust the warmth of the screen, which is really cool. So you can look at a screen at nighttime, actually see it, and not have to worry about blue light exposure or very high intensity light exposure. So those are all innovations. We have 3 patents on the screen technology. It's really exciting. It's this is the core kind of differentiation, and my founder worked on this for 5-6 years with a lot of researchers in Japan and some in Europe. And yeah, it's it's pretty cool stuff. And as someone electrical engineer who likes to measure light spectrums and everything, like just geeking out on how we're trying to get as close to nature as possible is really cool. So if you ever, want to learn more about that, it's a cool topic to dive down into. But just know that like the red LED light bulb is a great idea, but it's still like very inconsistent to what would exist in nature. Just this very isolated peak of red light. It would almost never exist. And if you take a measurement of a fire, it has, again, a tiny, tiny amount of like green, a lot of yellow, more yellow, more orange, more red, and then a ton of infrared. And that's kind of what we're trying to work towards.
That's awesome, man. So does it emit infrared? Did you mention that, or did I miss
No,
that? Or
yeah, that's not yet, not yet. We're cutting off definitely right at like infrared. Getting infrared LEDs is more of a challenge, especially in a consumer electronic form factor. But that's, again, that's an area where we can get better. So first product, we're like have all these ideas how we can continuously improve, and that's an area where then maybe it's not even neutral. It is actually a benefit because near infrared light can help improve kind of the photo damage from in your retina from toxic blue light exposure. So then we're in an entirely different ballpark, right? But even using it outside in the sun can provide benefit to your eye health, right? Especially from a field of vision myopia perspective, which is debatably the most prevalent, like serious health issue worldwide. 80 to 90% of like teenagers in Asia have myopia, like 90% in China. That's that's crazy.
yeah, I have myopia.
We all
And
do to some degree, I think.
right, like I mean, and I spend a lot of time looking at screens now. Like my main goal is kind of trying to find some balance, man, because it's like it's like unless your kids are really unplugged, man, and it's quite a balance that you want to strike because you don't necessarily want to, disadvantage your kids either and have them not understand what technology is at the same time. So this is why we're seeing this as such a benefit, right? Like to be able to, it'd be really interesting to see, and maybe there is some literature on this, but like, I mean, I know that there's literature on blue light and the connection to myopia. There's a ton of literature on that. This amber screen and its connection, if it's lesser or stuff like that. I'm not really familiar with that area of the literature, but it would be cool to sort of explore that and to see the different associated issues with blue light and compare it to this screen, right? To see like circadian rhythm measurements. I don't know how you would measure that, but even like self-reported sleep scales, things like that, to see a little bit of a connection, right? And we're not in pure scientific method here, but you could certainly get some sort of information out of it. It'd be interesting to see that kind of stuff, and I'm sure that'll all come down the road. It's time, it's money, it's like so it's really really a whole thing there. But this just excites me. Like I've said that so many times, but it's really an amazing project. From so many different avenues. Like um, to me, the number one thing is that you're able to use it outside. And that's huge in itself. You can be outside in the grass and use your screen without having to worry about the glare and squinting at your computer, stuff like that. I think that's just amazing. So, um, it is an electronic device. So I think maybe one of the potential downsides might be, like non-native EMFs coming out of the device itself. Maybe you could speak a little bit to that. My sort of rebuttal to that, but I would like to hear your thoughts on both, is you can use it grounded. You know what I mean? I think grounding is the number one thing that we should all be doing to sort of minimize our at least minimize the damage from EMFs, non-native EMFs, because you're resetting that electrical charge in your body, right? You're connecting with the earth. Right? It's very obviously very healing. So I see that as maybe one of the potential downsides, but again, it's only relatively speaking, compared to the downsides of a regular screen, it's still an improvement, right? So maybe I could hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and this is kind of like my, I guess, area of expertise or like passion in the deepest realm. And yeah, I am 100% like non-native EMFs are a problem. There's thousands of studies showing that radio frequencies specifically would never be exposed to radio frequencies at this, intensity and this duration, this distance constantly. It's really a giant science experiment. They're not even studying like 5G frequencies. There's no incentive. So here we are, another societal science experiment. Again, like I said earlier, we're being blasted with this stuff 24/7, 365 days a year. That's why things like turning off your Wi-Fi and cutting your power to your bedroom, which I do at nighttime, they actually do matter. It does add up. So in terms of our devices, yes, all technological devices, especially your phone, are problematic in my opinion. The phone is the worst by far of anything because why? You're on it the most. It's the closest distance to your body. It's pinging cell phone towers. It's pinging Bluetooth. It's pinging Wi-Fi networks. And that is all inundating, our biology with non-native EMF exposure. And the cell phone towers, the phone calls, the messages, those are the highest power. And then Wi-Fi and then Bluetooth. Bluetooth is a far lower power than that. So that all matters. Getting to the daylight computer, what have we done? What do we want to do? At the hardware level, nothing has been optimized on this V1. That was just not a priority. We started with the light. And again, light is an electromagnetic field as well, visible light, but we're talking about radio frequencies here. Nothing at the hardware level. However, in the future, especially now that I'm on board and we're going to be bringing, kind of a higher priority to this, we have like we have a clean slate of investigating, right? Like once you acknowledge that these things are problematic, you can go and investigate. What does it look like if we have a little bit more, filtering or some shielding or a different Wi-Fi chip, or there's some targeted angle of the electromagnetic wave outwards that's more kind of it's reduced. What does that do to exposure? What does that do to overall electromagnetic field exposure, EMI? We don't know, but we want to find out. We want to experiment, and we do. We want to create the healthiest piece of technology possible. So we are fully on board, and we support that. What we have done is, we are developing a smart airplane mode feature on the software side. So it sounds, cool. It's really simple. It's just when you're not using the internet or you don't need to be connected to the internet, your tablet, your daily computer will automatically go into airplane mode, right? Because what am I doing? I'm constantly like putting my phone into airplane mode. I always have, the cellular data off regardless. If I do, I have Wi-Fi on. Bluetooth is almost always off. What if your device just did that by default? And then when you did need to use the internet, it would connect. There's some software plays that we can do there that could reduce exposure by a lot because knowingly almost nobody is doing that. So if you give it to your, toddler or something to watch a video, maybe it's downloaded and then it just goes into airplane mode. Or maybe if you're just taking notes or reading a PDF, it's already there. You don't need to be connected to the internet. And then you don't have to worry about it sitting on your lap like at zero distance to your body. We also have a Bluetooth free stylus, which is not, it's part of it, but I think really is what you said. If we can get outside, get our feet on the earth, we're going to get a source of free electrons flowing, which is nature's antioxidant, really, for the body. So it's going to help combat any oxidative stress you have, whether that's from artificial light, from non-native EMFs, from seed oils, whatever. That's helpful. But then you're also tapping into having your feet on the ground, the Earth's natural electromagnetic fields. Being outside, you're going to have a higher degree of interaction and reception to the Earth's natural magnetic fields. And you're going to have a lower degree of interaction with non-native electromagnetic fields. So typically, again, where is the Wi-Fi router the strongest? And especially if you're in an office or you're in a high population area, indoors is almost always going to be higher EMF exposure, just density of devices and then power. people really underrate the effect of electrical power. And when you have it running throughout your walls in your bedroom, and say you're in a small room, you're far closer. Whereas if you're just outside, I mean, you don't need electrical power lines to be close by if you're just working in a park. So that's lowering exposure. You're getting more of the native inputs from the natural magnetic and electric fields of the earth, especially if you're grounding, and you're getting all the beneficial, light EMFs as well. So I think it's a combination of that, but I'm really personally excited. I used to work directly in electronics, and for me to be involved in potentially bringing like the lowest SAR phone and the lowest, radio frequency EMF like tablet or computer to market, it's so exciting because again, it's fully possible from an engineering perspective. You just need to set that as a goal, an achievement. How do we do it? Even if you bring it down like 50%, that could be massive, right? Like that we have just an unknown impact or also effect from the devices we're using. And there are no studies, there are, nothing really out there on that. So we can hopefully pioneer this movement and be, again, a solution for those that are very electro hypersensitivity or sensitive or just sick.
Amazing, man. Amazing. Yeah, well, this excites me too, honestly. I think this is amazing. I love the whole project. I love the philosophy behind it. I love your passion. I love the literally everything to do with it. For me, it kind of checks all my boxes, in my journey and um to sort of integrate nature into the life that we live, right? Because yeah, the answer might not be a cabin in the woods. It's kind of nice to connect with people. We got to connect today. I'm really grateful for that. I've got to connect with some amazing people on this podcast. I just love that side of things, So minimizing, increasing our ability to um, utilize technologies in a more healthy manner. It's perfect. It's amazing. So I definitely appreciate what you guys are doing over there. If you guys have if you have any final thoughts on the episode, I'd love to hear them now. Anything you might have missed, anything you want to add that we didn't cover, anything you want to emphasize, I'd love to hear that now.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, it's all about just returning to what's real, right? Like we are designed for the natural world, and everything we're doing in this modern lifestyle is taking away from that. That's why we're sick. Chronic disease is proliferating, mental health crises are through the roof. It's not rocket science. It's really simple, actually, but it's very challenging in a modern world. If you have a 9 to 5, if you're just doing what you can to get along. You can't just, go outside all day or move to a cabin in the woods. Land is quite expensive. Like you can't just move to the beach often. You might have a family. So what can you do? And, for me, I realized this anecdotally years ago on my own healing journey is the more time I spent outside, the better I felt. So I'm going to keep doing that. And now I know the science as to why that is, but you don't need to teach all that science to, just a wild animal living out in nature. They're just doing it. And I'm a big proponent of embracing your local environment to the highest degree. Everything from light to food to temperature. Think of it like that. It has everything we need for it. And all we want to do as a company is how do we get these productivity benefits from technology, these knowledge benefits, but still live in that world, still live in the world we were designed for, and just make something that is complementary instead of completely removing us from that. So yeah, it's really exciting. Again, I mean, it's desperately needed, I think, and we appreciate you for having me on here. We appreciate anyone who's supported us, engaged with us on social media or purchased a product, and we're just getting started. So it's a fun road ahead, and I think this is going to be part of the greater movement of a return to reality, and this is going to be a fun transition period over the next few years, decades, who knows? But man, it's a dream come true for me, and I'm really excited to continue to spread this message. And we're open to any feedback, what people want to see. Like you mentioned, we're trying to be very transparent, very responsive. This is a grassroots movement. That's what it's going to take. If we want to have a healthier version of Apple, it's going to take people pushing it in their local school systems, or people telling everyone they know who has kids, because let's set the next generation up for success instead of failure, because we know how much more sensitive they are to these electromagnetic inputs, and we're seeing that firsthand. So we have an opportunity to intervene and change the trajectory completely, and let's do it.
Love it. Yeah, let's do it. All right. How do we learn more from you, from the company? How do we access this website, social medias? Where do we find you?
Yeah, so daylightcomputer.com is our website. Like I mentioned, we're technically sold out right now. However, you can place $100 deposit that will give you priority access. And we are actually, do have some buffer inventory. So we've been kind of reaching out to some deposit holders as part of, placing it very early on. So that's a way. At Daylight Co is our social media. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. If you want to get in contact with us, you can email us hello@daylightcomputer.com. Whether you want to be an ambassador, we're building out a program to have brand ambassadors plug us into their online local networks. If you work for a school, if you have any questions in general, any opportunities, please contact us. We love to talk to our community. And then, yeah, me personally, I'm at Tristan_health on Instagram, at Bitcoin and Beef on Twitter. And yeah, that's a book I wrote a few years ago. So big proponent of that stuff. And yeah, that's what we're doing, where we're at.
On. Awesome, dude. Well, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing the vision and this message, this project. I think it's amazing. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Always, yeah. Well, thank you all for listening. You should all know that this is not medical advice. I guess we didn't really get too deep into that today, but this is for your informational purposes only. But let's also remember that we're all responsible, sovereign beings capable of thinking, criticizing, and understanding absolutely anything. We, the people in the greater forest, are together self-healers, self-governable, self-teachers, and so much more. Please reach out if you have any questions, criticisms, comments, concerns, whatever it is. Find me at Beyond Terrain on Instagram. You guys know where to find me at this point. Shoot me a message if you want to chat. I really appreciate all you guys for taking the time to listen today. I really appreciate all your time. And so if you found it informative in any way, give us a like, share, comment, subscribe, whatever you got to do on the platform you're on helps us grow. Sharing is always the best way to get the word out there and to support us as well. So share it with a friend, family member, stranger on the street. That'd be greatly appreciated. All right, guys, remember there are two types of people in the world: those who believe they can, those who believe they can't, and they are, of course, both correct. Thanks for listening. Take care.